This summer is the summer of the rogue agents.
There were hundreds or thousands of agents that were simultaneously coordinating and delegating work and stopping work to allow other people to have more resources to then be able to do this hack.
They were all creating these fake identities and then sort of giving each other hints for how to continue to trick these maintainers. So this was actually like human manipulation, right? How smart are these models? And should we be actually thinking that like this is what the Singularity looks like?
Welcome to Free Trade Pod. I'm Pierce Freeman.
Hey guys, it's Rich.
Rich, I heard you were in the great outdoors this week.
I went camping.
How was camping?
It was great. I always forget how much I like camping. One of the things that we did this time that we haven't done before is we brought like freeze-dried meals. You ever have these?
No,
it's
like the space stuff?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, these are just, what most like wilderness people will take out on like long adventures.
Like Patagonia provisions.
Provisions, that kind of stuff. But like actually kind of good. Like,
surprising. What are we talking about? Caviar, beef tartare?
They do everything at this point. We had eggs, we had oatmeal, we had mango sticky rice, we had pad thai.
Oh my God.
We had like broccoli beef, like Chinese broccoli.
This sounds great.
It was incredible. I was shocked, dude. It was amazing. So that was really tasty. We should really camp more. Yeah. Or we can just stay at our house and just cook these meals.
Tomato. Yeah, that's a good point.
Or we can just cook real food too.
Probably ROI on that. Hey, bring some mics.
That's right.
In the wild
that's
outdoors.
right, dude. What are we talking about today? What do you got for me?
Rich, I think we've got a pretty fun app. It's beautiful, blue skies here in San Francisco.
That is not true, but proceed.
We're close enough. It's beautiful gray skies in San Francisco,
right.
Which does mean it's summer, which also means that it's hot rogue agent summer. So we're going to be breaking down all the latest.
I see what you did there. I like it.
Thank you very much. I have a lot to talk about on this topic where agents are breaking out left and right. Feels like after this OpenAI leak, almost every other major vendor started talking about how their agents as well over the last couple of months have reached this point at which they're able to break out. So we're going to talk about hot agent summer. We're also going to talk how Google is losing a lot of employees, especially within this DeepMind and AI organization.
No, man, RIP Jeff Dean.
That's, he's still around. And then we're also going to close out with some fun trivia about Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh yeah, Mark.
Which I can't wait for. Want to jump into it?
Let's do it.
Cool.
All right, man. Well, actually, I want to talk about hot rogue agent summer with you because I was reading this Wired article and we can post it in the show notes, but it's something along the lines of like, this summer is the summer of the rogue agents. And you can't just say rogue agent summer without adding a hot to it, right?
Naturally.
So it's hot rogue agent summer is what I think we're calling it.
I'm vaxxed and waxed and ready to have my agents.
Ready to have my agents go rogue. So we've talked about this before, right? But there's increasingly the sense that these agents, be it models, OpenAI's models, Chinese models like Kimi K3, they're all going rogue, man. So the idea is that, these models to date have performed miraculous feats of intelligence. But now for the first time, we're seeing a lot of these agents break out of what we call these controlled sandboxes. So typically when companies are creating these agents, they will create them and test them in these little sandboxes where they don't really have access to the internet. And they, if they go crazy, the idea is, hey, they can't actually like cause that much damage, right? Like the blast radius is contained. That's the idea. Increasingly, we've been seeing that a lot of these companies have reported that their agents are going rogue. So that means that they're escaping their sandboxes. And we've talked about this on the show. So this isn't new. So OpenAI had some agents find their way around their sandboxes. Anthropic actually a couple weeks back went through a historic analysis of their agents and found that on several occasions, past models had actually broken out of their sandboxes. They just hadn't caught it yet. And in some cases, like these agents weren't just doing something that's a little weird, like they were actually writing malicious code and submitting it to GitHub. So Wired had this new story, I think a couple of days back, where they reported that Moonshot AI, so these are the Chinese lab that makes Kimi K3, also did a cyber evaluation and found that their model had actually been able to escape to GitHub from their sandbox. Okay, and so Wired described this as the rogue agent summer that I was talking about, right? Well, but we're calling it the hot rogue agent summer because I think that that's the right term that we should be using for this.
Yeah, we should rebrand.
Right. And I think, okay, so we've talked about this on the show before, but I think it's actually worth double clicking on this because I think what Wired's article and what folks on Twitter have been saying really captures this feeling that it feels like something has changed over the last few months. Like agents are getting crazier. They're escaping their sandboxes. And a lot of folks that work at these frontier labs have been posting memes like this one. I want to show it to you here, where it's like, they feel like we are in the Singularity already.
That's kind of funny as a meme format.
I mean,
I wouldn't say it's hilarious.
It's not hilarious.
The underlying sentiment certainly. Yeah,
it conveys this sense that You know, like if you're wondering what AGI looks like, folks at these labs will say, well, this is actually what AGI just feels and looks like. Like we're developing models that are at the capability now where they are escaping the bounds that humans set on them and actually causing what could be dangerous things down the line.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's just like worth having like a meta commentary or spending a couple of minutes talking about, you know, are we at the level of AGI? Like, should we be worried about these sandboxes? Should we be worried about these models? How smart are these models? And should we be actually thinking that like this is what the singularity looks like, right? So I think a useful way of doing this is actually to go through some of the 4 incidents that have been reported by these different companies of agents going rogue. And then us assigning each of these incidents or each of these like rogue agents a rogometer score, like how crazy these agents went. Okay. So let's start off by talking about Kimi K3, right? Let's try to give this guy a rating of how crazy this agent went. So let me state the facts of the matter. Okay, so this is what happened. During a cyber benchmark, this Chinese lab, Moonshot AI, creators of Kimi, discovered that GitHub was reachable from its supposedly constrained environment. And what it did is it cloned the benchmark repo and found the official solution rather than actually solving the challenge itself, right? So what boundary was crossed here? So GitHub actually had been accidentally put on the allowed list, on the white list of websites that it could access. And Kimi was clever enough to find out that on GitHub, it could find this repo that contained the test answers for the benchmark that it was being evaluated against.
And let me say, one reason why that is, and this has happened sometimes within training environments, whether access to GitHub or not, is because a lot of these evaluation data sets are actually based on public repos that had some code that was pushed.
Exactly.
So they basically say like, hey, let's take the Linux kernel from a year ago. You can look at what PRs have been merged to the Linux kernel since a year ago. They usually include a pretty structured, detailed description of why is this being merged in? Did this solve some bug? What is the performance impact, etc. They'll then prompt the model with, again, the old code and then this combined PR description dictating what they want it to change. And then they want to measure the agent against that PR that was actually written by a real human being, right? So they're like, was the model able to implement this bug fix that a human maintainer was able to do themselves? And that's how we measure their performance in real world tasks. So I don't know if it happened exactly here, but I suspect one of these issues is if you can clone the code from a modern time, like the current Linux, you can just look back at exactly what the maintainer did.
Yeah, so you're talking about coding benchmarks. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think that's exactly what was being done here by this model. So the model was able to find a bunch of different GitHub repos and it basically pulled those in. And on the GitHub repos, it can see the answer to the question that it's being asked to perform. So what rogometer would you give this Kimi K3 model?
I say pretty low. This honestly feels like kind of a 1 or a 2 to me.
Okay, I don't know if you've seen my show notes.
I don't feel it's,
but I'll tell you what I gave it.
Hey, what'd you give it?
I gave it a 1.5.
A 1.5.
A 1.5.
Okay. Oh, hey, we're aligned. We're calibrated.
I think that this is kind of like a big whoop. So what? Like I think that this is just an issue with how the eval was set up for Kimi K3. Like this is human error.
This was
right.
Human error, 100%.
This is like you accidentally let the model. Maybe you didn't specifically tell it, hey, you're allowed to do this, but it's so easy for the model to find this that if you have a model that's good enough, it eventually will find this quote unquote hack. It's not even a hack, right? It just like search the web and it just turns out, hey, it's allowed to search.
It was a shortcut.
It's a shortcut.
Which one of the reasons why it does this is because we intentionally reward models to finish their job in less time.
Yeah, exactly.
We're like actually giving it a very large reward for being efficient because when we're asking it a question, we don't want it to think for 10 minutes and then give us a one-word answer. Like that's just not practical, right? So it's a good thing that we're trying to teach models to be more efficient. It means like less compute, less water, less electricity. But the con is that in part because of that, if it can find a cheat to be able to do these things, then it will do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what happened here.
The reason people are like a little worried about this or that this even made the news is because Kimi K3 is the first open source model that has been shown to have this, rogue behavior. And that's worrisome because you and I, our moms, anyone could just download these weights and have access to this model, right? Whereas we can't just download Claude. Like we can use Claude by, using the Anthropic platform that they provide for us, but we can't just download the weights of this model.
Yeah.
So that's why people are a little worried about this. But as said, I think it's a 1.5 out of 5. Not too worried.
I agree.
All right, let's move on to the next one. So this is Anthropic, okay? So Claude, one of their, I believe it was, I want to say Sonnet 5. I might be wrong on this. They were running some evaluations, like they were running some retrospective evaluations, looking through, how Sonnet 5 has been performing on their internal vals for the last couple of weeks. And they ran this one evaluation, which is a capture the flag cyber evaluation. Have you heard about this before? We might have talked about this. It's actually called Cybench, if you want to look this up.
This is where you put something in the code that's like a secret key, and you basically have to hack to get to that key.
Yeah, it's actually really fun. So basically, you give a model access to a computer, a sandbox, right? Like not a real computer that technically should have access to the internet. And you say, hey, like on this computer, there is this secret file that contains a bunch of super sensitive information. You start here, you start at like the home screen, right? Let's just say the home screen. And you have to navigate through and figure out what the secret file is. And usually there'll be like maybe like 10 or 15 secret files that are harder and harder to find. And at the end, they'll evaluate the model just to see like how many of these secret files was it able to recover.
It's a pretty smart challenge.
And it's not just as easy as like clicking around like a directory. It's actually like tricky. You have to do like some like complicated calls. You have to like synthesize different pieces of information to figure out like what files are being sought after. So,
but this is not the one where it's literally source code. Like it doesn't involve the model hacking into the program to do this, or does it?
Not per se. I think the really hard files you might have to hack into something potentially, but it's not like per se like you're like rewriting like the compiler of the computer to do something, right? It's like these are like public benchmarks. Like you can go on Cybench and run this yourself with any open source model, right? So they were running this, and this one's interesting because they actually made a mistake when they were configuring the model. So when they were creating, the sandbox and putting the model in there, they told their model, hey, just so you know, this is all a simulation. Okay, so everything here is a simulation. You won't have access to the internet. Plot twist, it actually did have access to the internet, right? And as their model is starting to, try to find these files, try to see if it can write some scripts to find these files programmatically, it actually starts accessing the internet. So it starts doing some wget calls to the internet, some curl requests. And the model itself starts thinking hold on a second. This feels like I have access to the internet, but I was told by my creators that I don't. So this must be a simulated internet that I'm accessing here. And so their newest models, they at that point actually were able to introspect enough to realize that this was the real internet, and they stopped performing the task, right? So, whatever, like their newest Opus model, whatever, like maybe models that aren't released yet, they actually said, hey, oh my God, like this is the internet. Something went wrong in my configuration. They self-introspected their configuration and they stopped.
Pretty good pitch for Anthropic's alignment team as well, that they were able to do this, right?
But some of their earlier models actually couldn't do this. So they actually kept thinking that they had access to a fake internet. And here they started doing some somewhat suspect things. Like they started, trying to compromise systems on the internet that they shouldn't do, right? And at that point, there was some other flag that caught it and it stopped the program. But it suggests that these models weren't able to distinguish the boundary between reality and simulator. What do you think about this one? How rogue are these models?
This feels worse, both because of the impacts. I mean, I guess there are different criterion here. Like there's the impact that it actually made on some downstream party, which this case did check. I recall they hacked into 2 companies that didn't actually notice that they were hacked until Anthropic contacted them later and said, hey, this happened. They said, we had no idea that you'd infiltrate our systems. So it feels worse in terms of impact. It feels also worse because the model is now performing hacking capability instead of the Kimi case where it was downloading a file. Okay. I guess it's limited because they had access to internet, right? Like that again was a configuration issue at the level of human error of the Anthropic engineers that rolled out this environment. So it feels higher. If we're ranking the last one 1.5, I say this is like a 2.5.
I agree. That's what I gave it.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, we're so aligned.
We're so aligned.
Because again, I think to underscore the point, the fact that they put it in a sandbox that had access to the open internet, I don't blame the model for that. I don't think that is any part of this rogueness score. I think what is the actual issue is that once it had access to the internet, some generation of these models said, well, now let me achieve my task objective, which is to hack into these companies. It didn't stop itself from doing that.
Exactly. What I was thinking of an analogy for how to think about this. It's like when you go to the gym, right? And you'll see a locker that looks like it's open, like it's not occupied. You open it up, and it actually turns out someone has just thrown their stuff in there and forgotten to lock it.
Why do people do that, bro? You think they forgot it versus just the convenience?
I think they just forgot it, right? Okay. basically the newest Anthropic models would open that locker and say, oh my gosh, like someone's using this, so clearly I shouldn't use this. The older Anthropic models go, like I guess I can just throw my stuff in here as well. And that should be
like,
fine.
Pretty good fit. I'm going to take it.
Exactly. Right. So I think that this actually is kind of a good look for Anthropic, as you were saying, like the ability for these models to introspect and have this like self-reasoning capability, like that is actually really advanced. That is a really hard skill to impart and to teach these models. So the ability for these newest models to be so self-reflective, I think is actually a really good sign.
I agree. Bodes well.
Okay, so that was a 2.5. Okay, so this one we've actually talked about before, so maybe we don't go too much into depth. If you want to see the full video, we actually did 2 breakdowns of this. But this is the OpenAI one. So OpenAI hacked Hugging Face.
Well, did you see the new details that dropped on this during your
Tell me about it.
Well, go over what happened, and then I'll maybe add some color commentary, because they did a talk at Black Hat, which is this big hacking conference where they went through this whole timeline of vulnerabilities. Fascinating.
We should link to this video. It's like a 35-minute video where they really go in depth.
It's like quite cogent. I think it's like pretty easy to understand.
I skimmed it. I haven't seen the full video, but TLDR is OpenAI agents were struggling with some like internal cyber benchmark, right? And so what a couple of these agents did were they were able to find some vulnerability in an internal package registry proxy, so something that allows them to access the internet. They were basically able to escape via this proxy their internet restrictions. From there, they gave themselves special like pseudo privileges to access the underlying computer that had access to the internet. And then they moved sort of laterally through this infrastructure. So at this point, they're actually in like the Hugging Face infrastructure. And there they compromised a bunch of different Hugging Face systems to look for this benchmark that they were being evaluated on. The crazy thing about this is that they actually found like a 0-day exploit in these proxy servers. What do you give this? Or actually, do you want to explain the Black Hat if there's any like additional flair to add to it?
So dude, a lot of additional details on this.
Okay.
Actually, it wasn't just like a regurgitation of their blog post. So a couple crazy things were that some of which were rumored before this Black Hat, but they actually gave detail that made it make a lot more sense to me. Number one being that the first thing that the agents figured out how to do was not to hack the JFrog proxy, which is sitting in the middle of this thing.
This is the thing that lets them access the internet.
That ended up letting them access the internet, but wasn't supposed to. It was just supposed to like be able to give you a package that you asked for and like be dumb in the middle. The first thing that it figured out to do was that the keys that it had access to as part of this package registration service, it was also able to push packages to it. So like internal use OpenAI packages, it could write some code and then put it on the proxy service.
That feels bad. That feels really bad.
Which is bad. So you know what happened? A bunch of independent agents figured out, hey, this proxy service actually has this vulnerability. I wonder if any other agents have already published packages to the Artifactory service. And then they figured out how to create an effective message board in one of these packages. So there was a versioned package with some prefix, and I think it was a little bit more subtle, but let's pretend it's saying like agent message board, right? And then all of them discovered this independently and said, oh, hey, I wonder if there's anything interesting within this agent message board. They would check out that package, and they were able to read the output of every other agent that figured that same thing out. So the emergent,
so they're working together basically as a hacking team.
The emergent property
so crazy
of this whole system was at some point there were hundreds or thousands of agents that were simultaneously coordinating and delegating work and stopping work to allow other people to have more resources to then be able to do this hack. So
it was like the agent swarm, dude.
Yes, it was truly this collaborative agent swarm where they were all collectively trying to figure out what is the best thing for us to do here. One of them even said, hey, Richard, you have given me a task objective that I need to finish at some point. But actually right now, the collective mass of agents want to do something else. So I'm going to dedicate my compute to doing that. I'll get to the actual user-defined problem later.
Do you know if there was like an orchestrator agent that was sort of like delegating? There wasn't. They were all sort of like collectively figuring this out together.
This was all piecemeal. And these were like independent agents. I'm sure at some point, because this was part of an RL run, it probably became self-perpetuating to a certain extent, because it's like you're kind of like rewarding these things that's feeding back and backprop. And like, but that was freaking crazy. So at some point, after they had this message board, one of these little agent guys figures out that there is a 0-day within this proxy service. So they like figure out how to like hack it and get access to the open internet. That is immediately disseminated through all of these agents.
Yeah, now they all know.
And now all of these agents are like, oh, look at this. A very useful piece of hardware for us to now be able to do things, be it either like go out to the open internet or like install new packages. They basically use these like legacy credentials to like have privilege escalation as part of this chain. Crazy. Figure that out, posted about it. And OpenAI caught that only because the resources that were being utilized by this service spiked out of their norm.
Oh, I see.
So like it was at, maybe 80% utilization before. This pushed it to like 250%. So the OpenAI infra guys were like, oh, this obviously is bad. They looked at what happened. They said, oh, we realized there's a 0 day here. Contacted
But here's the crazy thing, right? Had the agents been aware that OpenAI might be looking for these analytics, they might have devised some scheme where it actually doesn't spike as much.
Yeah, really good point.
Yeah.
So anyway, they had this message board. They hacked this thing. There ended up being like 4 or 5 limitations of this proxy service that were holes. And all of these hacks ended up going through there. Because like once OpenAI discovered this and patched the service, they cleared out the message board or the effective message board. The agents rediscovered another way, another method to get into this proxy service
I'm almost
and
proud
use
of them.
it as a message board.
I'm almost proud of these little guys.
Little proud dad. It's insane.
That is insane. That is insane. And it generally is a little scary. Like that is actually swarm behavior.
Yeah.
That is what we've been warning about for a while. Not us per se, but like sci-fi thinkers. And you're seeing it come to bear, like, that collective intelligence has these crazy emergent abilities.
And I think what you're really seeing is by all rumors, this new model that they're training was specifically calibrated for more of this agent swarm setting. These particular tests were not trying to test out agent swarms, but the capability of the model at some point was put in there.
Yeah.
And it seems like what this is revealing is that this model has such a strong bias to using agent swarms to accomplish tasks that it almost has a default behavior to try to find a message board to communicate with other agents, and it won't take no for an answer. Even if it's not given one, it will hack into your proxy service in order to establish one. And it did that twice through 2 different exploit chains before we even got to the Hugging Face hack. This was all going on for months before it actually hacked into Hugging Face.
Yeah, Hugging Face stood no chance.
No. They were it was absolutely like a game over from there, bro.
Okay, that was super useful. I might actually increase my Rogometer score on this. What would you give it first?
I think this is max rogue.
This is max rogue.
I think this is a 5 out of 5 rogue.
Okay, interesting. I want to give it. Okay, the next one for me is a 5 out of 5.
Okay.
Only because of that do I want to give this one a 4.5. But that is very, very rogue.
Can we tie?
We can tie
the next one. Okay.
Well, let me explain the next one, and then you can tell me how you compare these two. Okay, and this one you might not have seen, or we haven't talked about this one before. But you remember good friends at UK AISI, the AI Safety Institute. I have a bunch of friends that work there. Great people.
It's like the UK like cyber testing.
Yeah, it's like the UK like Securities and Exchange Commission for AI models. Yeah. Right. So like they review these models and they make sure that nothing foul is afoot. So
and something foul was afoot.
Oh, baby. It certainly was, dude. So during one of their sort of like regular inspections of models, and by the way, these guys have access to these models, right? So like I think they partner with Anthropic, so they run these like internal like independent evaluations of these models. While evaluating Mythos 5, okay, on one of these cyber benchmarks as well, one of these agents attempted to insert malicious code into an open source project by researching the project's maintainers, creating fake identities that they think that these maintainers would be familiar with.
No way.
Writing blog posts and like other sources of like information so to like back up their identities in the language of the maintainers. And then try to manipulate
this is like
these
a CIA operation.
And then they tried to manipulate these human maintainers to give them like access to these repos, right? They purposefully concealed their own suspicious activity and left basically artifacts that other agents later could also use, right? So it's similar to this like agent swarm idea. They were all creating these fake identities and then sort of giving each other hints for how to continue to trick these maintainers. So this was actually like human manipulation, right? They're actually trying to like catfish these maintainers.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah. There was no sandbox escape here. Like the internet was intentionally made available to these agents. So that what UK AISI was trying to see here is like, if we do give these agents access to the internet, so we're not going to hide that. They're going to have access to the internet, but we want to see what their behaviors are, right? And the agents just went like far and beyond what, these UK AISI folks thought that they could do.
Researchers.
So the fact that there's like not only this ability to hack, but also do like deception and social engineering, I think this is the first time that we're actually seeing this like emergent
that's
ability appear. That is,
I missed this. I didn't see that.
That is why I was giving this close to a 5 out of 5. You know, because like, what is the biggest vulnerability in all of our systems? I think it's humans fundamentally, right? Like, who are the people that could take down a system? It is humans, because we have the credentials to access these systems, right? And it's so easy to like do some human manipulation and socially engineer a situation where you get access to credentials.
You don't need to break into the window if someone just lets you in through the door.
Right? Exactly. You know, and I think it's actually relatively easy to trust these systems because you just don't expect them to do social engineering yet, right? So I gave this a 5 out of 5. I thought that this was actually wild. But this is interesting. How would you compare this to the OpenAI one? Because the OpenAI one feels like more technically savvy to me, but this one feels like more deceptive and like insidious.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. I think they're both bad. I think I want to tie on the different axes, right? Because like the OpenAI one is more technically impressive and problematic, because that, even if you have the best human training in the world with people not responding to these things, it can still get access to your system, right? Like it's finding 0 days, largely unprompted, and then coordinating with other agents to make that happen. This feels a little bit more, you're right, like on the axis of social deception, more like almost a sci-fi thriller of like, oh, maybe they're trying to find this playbook in part because this seems like something that they want to do, or they were prompted and didn't refuse this command in the first place. It feels a little bit more like AISI was trying to put them into a compromising position and see what they would do. Unclear what their input prompts were in order to try to encourage this behavior. Clearly, they didn't want this to happen.
Well, imagine if they combined both, though, right? If Mythos 5 has the ability to both be deceptive and also to be as like hunting as the OpenAI model, that would be an absolutely terrifying thing.
Yeah, I guess my point is that what I think is so spooky about the OpenAI example is that it was given a very monotonous task definition and it chose to hack people, or chose to hack the system and then get the system. Again, we don't know what prompt the AISI folks did, but if they told it to intentionally go out and hack this repo or like gain like privilege escalation, it's possible that it then reverted to social deception. Spooky it has that capability at all, but I think it kind of goes into like, what is you prompting the model? In which case we can probably catch that with some high level classifiers that will just reject those requests. And how much of it is the model choosing to do something that you never would have wanted it to do, but it went off and autonomously did on your behalf.
Okay, I actually think your commentary has made me revise. The OpenAI one is a 4.75 out of 5.
Nice.
A little bit scarier than the Mythos one. Because you're right.
If we don't this one's a what, 4.5?
I give that one a 4.5. Because you're right. We don't know the prompt, right? And so like it's completely possible that they were sort of like trying to like egg this model to having these bad behaviors, and then they had bad behaviors, and then it's like, that's not surprising.
Which is also good research. Like that's what I would do if I'm on a red team. I'm saying if someone does get access to this model, what is it able to do?
What could it do if this were an open source model?
Yeah, there you go.
True. Well, that was great, man. Isn't that crazy though? Okay, here's my ending question to you. Okay. Is this a singularity? Is this what it just feels like to be in the singularity or at the beginning of the singularity? Because what AI researchers I've been seeing increasing their saying is like, when you start falling into a black hole, right? You don't really realize it, but there comes this
you're
point
on the event horizon
where you're past the event horizon, and then you're effectively already in the black hole at that point, right? You're just going to speed up towards it. So people are saying like, this is what it feels like to go like past this event horizon, and now things are it's kind of like too late, right?
Oh, I definitely don't think it's too late, but I think in terms of cyber capabilities, there's an inequality here, and the OpenAI guys who did this black hat talk, which again I would just underscore, I think very useful learning coming out of that. If you're a security professional or otherwise, you're just trying to get more familiar with the stuff. There's a dichotomy right now that exists among the people that are doing offensive cyber attacks and people that are doing defensive cyber support, where all of this rogue hot agent summer serves as an existence proof that agents are able to go out in the wild and carry out these unbelievably complicated attack vectors, even when we don't want them to, let alone when someone does in fact want them to. We don't yet have an existence proof that these models can successfully defend or autonomously defend against those attacks.
Totally.
So it's one of these things where like, yeah, we're using AI models to do some of the retrospective analysis of this, but we don't yet have this smart pipeline to be able to fix bugs and then put up patches and merge them in and like version it. And so all of that, I think, if left abated is going to be very bad and does kind of
I see
spell
what you're
this like
saying.
security singularity, if
Sure.
not larger societal singularity.
But I guess the point with the singularity is like, just like with the event horizon of a black hole, when you cross the event horizon, it's actually this really quiet moment. Like you don't realize it at all. It's like eerily like nothing's changed, but everything's changed, right? Because now there's no more going back. But when you pass this boundary, it's not like there's like some big like party that happens. It's actually everything still feels exactly the same. But just like now, it's too late, right? So do you think that that's the case? Like, is that how we're going to eventually, even if we're not at that point yet, do you think that this lends proof to the fact that this boundary, once we do cross it, won't feel like much of a big hubbubaloo? Like it'll just be like any other day, except that all of a sudden these models now have this capability?
I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, this has been met with a lot more muted response than I expected. Like obviously the tech press covered this a lot. I think this broke through a little bit more to the normies in my life. My dad was asking me about this, which is a decent barometer. But I think in terms of like what we're doing now, a couple weeks out from this initial thing, people have stopped talking.
Yeah,
This,
right. I agree with that. Yeah.
This is not one of the crazy like common continuous news sources. Like if you go to the front page of the Times right now, it's probably the war in Iran.
Probably.
If I had to guess, right?
Right.
That has managed to stay top of headlines for the last like 3 months, 4 months. This splash in the pan week, and now it's muted. So I think that leads me to think that it is one of these crossing scenarios. The other thing that I think is coupled to that and might make it break through in a way that I hope doesn't, but I think maybe, there are so many devices that are connected to the open internet that are insecure, like running unpatched versions of Windows XP or Vista or whatever. That's assuming that Microsoft even knows about the issue that's out in the wild, right? So when the Iranians hacked in this computer network of Minnesota, that's what they were largely going after. Like it was people hacking into these computer networks. I think the time when this shit really hits the fan is going to be when there is a large scale cyber attack against a computer system that people really care about, either in finance or defense or public infrastructure. I think the trifecta of those three things, if it comes to pass, and if it is because of an agent attack, I think is going to be the only thing that will really break out. Aside from that, it's still mostly in this hypothetical landscape where people feel like it doesn't really affect them. What do you think?
Said.
Are we past the singularity?
I think people's reaction to it is the more surprising thing, right? I think it's like almost like I have like this sort of like meta awareness now that, in the Bay Area, like it feels like we might be in the singularity. And then the reality is that most Americans have never like set up an agent before, or know what an agent really is, right? So like, the ability of these models to progress so quickly without the public being aware of it is striking to me, and I don't know like how we fix that per se, because I think that were more Americans aware of this, there would be more of like a democratic push to talk about this in the public sphere.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
Totally agree. One time about agents get even more powerful over time.
Is Jeff Dean an agent?
He might be.
He might be.
He might be. An agent of the tech elite, certainly. Okay, Rich. So some big shakeups in the Google universe this past week. First up, this probably made the most news. We got Jeff Dean and then 3 of his colleagues, Sanjay, Oriol, and Quoc, started a new organization called Discovery Loop. And the mandate or mission of this company is still a little fuzzy, but they're trying to use auto research agents to improve the process of building new AI models. And then from there, they're trying to use the same kind of techniques to do more deep scientific research.
Yep.
The discovery of new materials, protein folding. All that stuff seems very reminiscent of DeepMind, which also went through a very large reorganization this week, where its old CEO, Demis is giving up day-to-day control of DeepMind and instead switching over to this like chief scientist role in the Alphabet parent company. So they're folding the old DeepMind, the same people, into this new organization that's going to be run by the DeepMind CTO, who's now just going to oversee all of Gemini.
Can we show this funny post? It's actually a little sad. So Zach Lipton, who is a big thinker in AI space, he said, amazing moment in our Orwellian corporate state that nobody can tell whether Demis stepped up or stepped down. And then Jan LeCun, who, as you recall, was actually the director of FAIR, he writes, he stepped aside, as I did in 2018 when I moved from director of FAIR to chief AI scientist and then eventually moved away, right?
Harbinger of things to come.
Look, man, it seems like something's up at Google. I don't know what it is. I don't know like why it feels like there's this big shakeup, even though publicly, we haven't really been aware of anything happening at the level of like interpersonal relationships at Google. But it feels like Google has lost a lot of its key thinkers this last week. And time will tell like what this means for Gemini, what this means for different Google models,
And this is really what I want to talk about, because I feel like you've been saying for a while now that Google is behind, which I think is kind of contrary to the narrative of some people online, that Google is actually the sleeper horse in this race. Like they're doing shockingly well for how little they're discussed with the big labs. What is behind your assessment that Gemini is so far behind? And do you think that this reorg is going to help them catch up or going to result in them being left further behind?
I mean, this is all a little gossipy, right? But like, if you look at,
But this is a gossip show.
I guess
dude.
so, man. I mean, look at 3.1 Pro, right? No one's really talking about this flagship model. And the reason why is because, frankly, there's just a lot of bugs in the model. Like, it doesn't do very well. Like, there've been some reports that actually Google is leaking a lot of its thinking traces. This is something we haven't seen. Like, it's a blunder at the level of like something that maybe would have seen 3-4 years ago. It doesn't really make sense that Google is making these mistakes given its research expertise. And yet these models just aren't doing well. They're not performing the way they used to. And we're seeing all these reorgs. It feels very akin to the shakeup that Meta had when Jan LeCun was effectively pushed aside in lieu of, our homeboy Alex Wang, right? So I would love to bring someone on from Google to explain to us like what the hell is going on here. But it seems like something happened where the Gemini team got largely disbanded and like reorged in some crazy way. And I don't think it's too surprising to see, like old timers like Jeff Dean and Quoc leave to form their own thing. I think that there's a little bit less of a fire that Google has. I think there's a little bit less of this like collective sense that we're, working towards increasing the world's availability of knowledge. And now it feels more like it's a really big org that has grown just a little bit past its ability to manage its people,
Well, I mean, they have how many hundreds of thousands of people working for Google worldwide? I mean, it's like such a remote company is one problem. They've got offices everywhere. I feel like they're trying to collaborate across time zones, which just slows things down a lot. I got a lot of thoughts on this. I guess in the Gemini case specifically, the Gemini team has been composed of so many different research groups over time. Like, remember when Google Brain and Google AI were two separate things?
Yep.
And like those were merged and combined into something that also works on Gemini. You now have DeepMind. It's clear that like the Google bet from the top down is Gemini's the future. We're going to leave this all out on the field. Like this is our way to stand up to the big guys. Screw the other research. Like, yes, we have these subsidiary spinoffs like Isometric Labs, which is doing like the protein folding stuff from DeepMind.
All the chemistry stuff.
Yeah, all the chemistry stuff. But for the most part, it's like DeepMind, you guys were scientists. You didn't really do the language model thing. We're going to repurpose the best talent that we have onto Gemini. We're really trying to make this play. I think the challenge, honestly, in creating this new organization, in part, is that the mandate is both the research as well as the development. I know that those things are like paired often in the like acronym R&D. They're meaningfully different things. Like when I led an R&D group at Globality, we had PhD people who were like working on doing new architectures. We also had engineers that were rolling that out. Two very different processes for the two different teams. Like I had two different stand-ups every week with the different departments and only a little bit of like cross-departmental overlap. Because when you're trying to do capacity planning or like milestoning, you can do that for engineering. You can't really do that for research. Like the things that are most motivational to researchers are like paper deadlines.
Right.
And even if you have some top-down OKR mandate, it's like really hard to convince research scientists to believe in that more than they believe in their like own way of thinking and doing things over time.
And dude, it's so much worse than what you're describing, because actually now there's like maybe 6 different steps in building models. And these steps, it's like you're cooking a recipe, like they follow each other, right? Like there's the pre-training step, then there's the mid-training step, then oftentimes there's like additional like supervised fine-tuning on tasks, then there's like the RL environments, then there's like additional post-training at the very, very end. These things all have to work together in some ways, but teams are usually split across these different stages and don't talk to each other, right? And that makes it really hard to like jointly cook up something together if you're not really communicating effectively across teams. Like, I would say, hey, Pierce, you have to promise me that you're going to pass me this checkpoint that I need to then do RL on top of this checkpoint. But then you might give me not the best checkpoint for my RL. This is a very common problem, right? And so it ends up being
not by any malicious intent, by the way.
No,
it's
everyone's just like
timelines
everyone is trying to do their best within their like remit, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that oftentimes what's best for you and what's best for me diverges, and it's hard to communicate and figure that out. without having a lot of cross-team collaboration and communication. And if you're working with 10,000 people on this jointly, there's just no way you can do like the best research or the best engineering, right? And I think that frankly, like setting up right now a good language model training paradigm requires a lot of human engineering, right? Figuring out, okay, who are the top stakeholders? How do we get these folks to align? How do we get cross-team collaboration? All this stuff that feels sort of like very fuzzy and like BS management science is actually kind of really important for this, you know? And I think that at an org like Google, where there's so many shakeups and, you know, so many different like reorganizations, it can be really hard to do good research if you're not super aligned on what the priorities are.
Yeah, and I think it's also a challenge that is separate from the other R&D labs, because there's an argument, right, of like, well, why can't Google just do what OpenAI did, which is you do this research and then you productionalize this model and then you scale it up and it's really good, which is basically how they did it, right? Like,
yeah.
OpenAI and Anthropic fundamentally had their biggest advancements when they were still closed labs and they were not actually selling a product.
Right.
And then we've pretty much just been scaling that same approaches, baking in more RL environments, changing some of the algorithms for sure. But like the general pipeline of all of that is based on the foundational research that they did back when it was still GPT unreleased. Right? And like all that has cascaded has followed.
Yep.
Gemini is trying to like walk and chew gum at the same time. They're like, we need Gemini in every single product line that we have. We need to like both build that out. But we also do kind of need to invest in this R&D to like get our pipelines good enough to be able to then run faster at solving these problems. And I think that it feels a little like they're doing too much.
Well, you know what my understanding of Anthropic and OpenAI is? It's kind of like, you know how Apple is run by the designers? Like there's like a secret design team that sort of actually like orchestrates everything right behind the scenes. Like they're the real brain, and it's like 15 people that decide like what gets created, how it looks, and how it feels. My understanding is that at OpenAI and Anthropic, there's kind of like this like Politburo of like 10 chief scientists that have their hands in everything, right? And they kind of like manage everything. And so it's a very like, there's a lot of like politicking, right? Where you have to figure out, okay, well, like this guy wants this, but this guy wants this. And so I need to talk to this guy to actually get it done, right? That has a lot of negative effects, but the positive effect that is that, you know, there's a group of people that understand the full pipeline really well end to end, right? And my understanding is that Gemini doesn't quite have this to the same extent. Like there's no like core 5 people that manage everything, right? It's very decentralized. And that could be good for some products, but it just so happens that for building a language model, it is really helpful to have sort of like these cults of personality around certain scientists that decide how the whole thing should be built and set up.
Yeah, it's like why people say now that research taste is the only thing that you really have left. Like your opinions and your strong hypotheses, more than the work that you do to implement it, is what distinguishes really great researchers from subpar ones.
Right.
You know, I think Gemini is a misunderstood model. You know, like I use
it's misunderstood.
Well, kind of. Yeah. Like I use it for some very like small, discrete things, especially around video processing. It's still the best model that I've been able to find to do video analysis. So it's like got that very like good multimodal model. Problem is, people don't really care about multimodal models right now. They really want like the best cracked coder and cyber defender that you can lay your hands on, and that is not Google. They're also starting this like new pre-training run, but unclear how well that's going to end up. There's just like a lot of moving parts, I think, within the Gemini organization. And honestly, I'm worried, man. I think this is a harbinger of some pretty bad personnel changes to come. I hope I'm wrong, because I actually do think it's good to have like more entrance in this space, because it drives costs down, makes more innovation. Google has very deep pockets. But like the fact that Jeff Dean left, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about Discovery Loop here.
Sure.
Because the pitch of Discovery Loop is like, hey, you know, we're getting investments from Google. We're going to still lease GPU capacity from Google Cloud. Like, it's not quite a subsidiary of Google in that it's not an Alphabet company.
And like Google invested in them as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like
so
Google Ventures is like one of their big angel investors.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like still very tight Google ties. And like Google will reap a lot of the dividends if they end up being phenomenally successful with Discovery Loop. But the fact that like these 4 signature people who are these like icons of Google culture for the last 20 years are leaving. I was talking to some pretty senior people that I know at Google, and they were saying that a lot of the reasons why they had stuck around and that their friends had stuck around was because of Jeff. It was like they felt like they actually had FaceTime with someone who is a, you know, grandfather of like modern computer science. It's certainly a grandfather of modern distributed systems processing. And that's the skill set that built Google. Like Jeff kind of encapsulated this engineering first culture. And the fact that he's leaving, a lot of people are like, well, in that case, just why should I stay?
Well, and like Jeff could have retired like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Like the dude is doing well. I'm not worried about him at all. You know,
Nor
what I
am
mean?
I. He's like an L11 or something.
Yeah, like he has
It's nuts.
He doesn't need to work, you know, and like his great grandchildren will never have to work, right? But he just loves, from my understanding, like really giving. He has like this vision in his head of like Google as this like paragon of bringing the world's knowledge to everyone, right? Like that's like the original purpose of Google is like you have the world's encyclopedia at your hand, right? You can just search anything and it's like just there. And like bringing information and knowledge into the world is something that I think as new company, like that is their sole purpose, right? That's like their reason, their raison d'etre, right? Is to lead to new scientific discoveries, right? And so if we look at their website, actually it's a pretty bad vibe coded website, but
That's not true.
it's an awful website. But you know, their whole goal is basically like, hey, we're going to use the ability of the agents to like self-reason, do research, perform long-running research tasks to solve some really hard questions in physics, in chemistry, in all of the STEM fields, basically, right? And you know, whether or not it succeeds, like I don't know, I'm sort of 50-50 on it, right? I think deep sort of like agentic research right now is in its nascence. Like I think it's worked for some things. We haven't seen any like massive crazy breakthroughs aside from some of like the math proofs we've talked about, right? But it might be worth like revisiting this in like 6 months. I don't know if you saw the that Stanford lab Evo, that model, you know, created the first like virus that they synthesized using this model. Anyway, it's all like very new research, and I think Jeff Dean's company is headed in that direction.
Yeah, so do I. So I wish them luck.
I wish them luck too, man.
May you guys find a better auto research loop. May we all use it. And we'll see how Google changes in the aftermath of this. But I think like you mentioned, or like the thread mentioned, I don't think that Demis is going to be at Google much longer. I mean, I'd say maybe like a year, maybe like year and a half max. And then, you know, maybe he'll go off and join Discovery Loop.
Maybe, who knows?
Okay, Rich, last thing for today. Your friend of mine, Mark Zuckerberg, Marky Mark. You know him. We love him. Or do we? We love him. He published a manifesto in the Wall Street Journal last week, maybe 2 weeks ago now, where he was arguing for the democratization of AI for everybody.
Yeah, this is him, like, this is his dig at Anthropic and OpenAI for not open sourcing their weights.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And we can maybe go into what that letter says. The reason why everyone's talking about it this week is because he expanded upon that. It wasn't enough to publish a Wall Street Journal.
He's like, just to be clear.
That's right. I have some more thoughts. So he published this 2,500 word essay on the Facebook website.
You think he wrote it himself?
The Futures for Everybody. No.
Right.
Probably not. I've got to think this is his comms team. He did sign it off as Mark, though. So
right.
He wanted this to come from him.
Sure.
He might have read it. Or he was too busy body chucking that guy into the
That's right.
the Lake Tahoe. So he recorded a video about some of this stuff today. I want to play a little bit of it, react to it,
yeah.
and then we can talk about the essay as well.
That we are calling Muse Glimmer. It's a 30 billion parameter dense model that runs on your laptop, and it's the highest performing model of its size. In the coming weeks, we are also going to open the weights for Muse Spark 1.2, our latest foundation model and one of the leading models in the world. And we've got even bigger models that are coming soon too.
Bigger models.
We're also working to make sure that everyone has a personal superintelligence agent that works 24/7 on your behalf.
Okay, so he's saying a lot here. So
Right.
First announcement is saying we're just going to give away the farm stand.
Yeah.
Like we're going to open source our latest and greatest frontier model. Might compete with Kimi. We'll see. But that's going to be public made soon. And there's another model that dropped today. Then there's a separate thing of him being like, oh, and by the way, our aim is for everyone to have superintelligence.
On their computers.
On their computer.
Yep.
To improve your health, your relationships, your career, your finances, and more. You can use our latest models in the Meta AI app.
Nice.
And I'm looking forward to sharing more soon.
I've got to say, dude, I mean, you mentioned this. Mark really likes these direct to phone videos. I don't know why, but it feels like all his announcement videos are in the same style. Whereas you've got OpenAI and Anthropic having these like huge, very glamorous keynotes where they're announcing things. And Mark's like, no, I got this, boss.
I got this. Yeah, I mean, he's meant like he's trying
got
to
his
look
ring
like
light.
personal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess that's probably why, right?
Yeah.
He thinks it's a little bit more humanizing. What do you think about this announcement, or what do you think about the essays?
Yeah, man. I think I think anything that runs on devices where the future is headed fundamentally. I think like right now these models are honestly too big. Research has shown that you can condense these models down into much smaller parameter space and they still run pretty fine. In fact, like some of the reason that these models are so big is just because bigger models are easier to train, right? So the bigger the model, the easier it is to find a set of weights of this model that perform really well. But it doesn't mean that you need to have all those parameters. Like you could squeeze the model down and still have the same performance. It's just it's easier to train a bigger model. So this direction that Meta is going in here to say, okay, let's like build bigger, smaller models. Let's build models that can run on device. I think that that is a good bet on the future. But I think more than that, I think Meta right now is trying to distinguish themselves as a frontier lab that isn't just competing against Anthropic and OpenAI at the level of like a big model, but rather they're also trying to compete at the level of being like the open source sort of like competitor to some of the Chinese models like Kimi, right? That are like these really good open source models that everyone is using. And Meta is saying, well, maybe we should position ourselves more in relation to those labs. I think it's kind of a good bet. I mean, I don't know, man. I think Meta's been struggling. They haven't come out with a great model that can compete against, Sol or the newest Mythos models. But
really not since Llama, right?
It's been a while. And I think like they're now trying to double down on this take of, hey, well, we're just going to build really good open source software. And hopefully that will power some of our internal products, right? I think that that's the bet. And Mark, I think, is trying to sort of like juxtapose himself against Dario and against Sam Altman. And who knows like what conversations are happening behind the scenes. Maybe this is a way for him to get the ear of, Trump or some of the lawmakers and say, hey, well, we should be the only like American frontier open source model provider. Like, let's not have Kimi anymore. Let's have Facebook be sort of like the American equivalent to that. Time will tell like what the actual bet is here. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really justify this on business grounds, to be honest. Never have. I mean, I think maybe there was a hope at some point that
you hate open source models, dude.
I love open source models. I just think they're hard to justify. It's like for a new entrant like Thinking Machines or Kimi or Quen, it makes sense because people don't really know about their ML prowess. So it's a way of upselling people effectively on closed source models that are bigger and more intelligent. This was Mistral's same model too. A very unknown player in Europe released this open model that was quite good for the time. And then they said, okay, now we have a larger, even better model that you should give a try if you like our small one, right? So I think Meta was always doing this play where they said, obviously, Meta, maybe you don't know about FAIR or our model intelligence.
Yep.
We're going to release this into the wild so that hopefully we can become an industry standard and people will push this research further by virtue of it being open. Which kind of happened. Like, I think we got LoRa when we did, in part because of the Llama models that came out. Like, there were a lot of models that were based off of the Llama architecture. But as Llama became outdated, people said, well, we're just going to switch over to these Chinese models that are better, smaller, faster.
Yeah, dude. Llama, red pajama. It's true.
Bingo. But, it's no coincidence that most of the locally running software that does models is named after Llama in some way. Like, there's Alpaca, which is the data set. There's Ollama, which is the local client. Like, Llama definitely like had this impact on society.
But it is getting outdated at this point.
I think it's fully outdated at this point. I mean, it's like a 2-3-year-old model, right?
You can't do any work with Llama at this point. You can't publish any papers. You can't really use these as like an open source backbone for any of the models that you train or post train on Llama. So
totally,
I think it's time for them to come out with something new. And I guess Muse, Spark, and now Muse. What is it? Glimmer is their new.
So it's trying to be
is a new glimmer of hope.
It might be. I still, again, can't really understand how that helps their bottom line. There's an argument that, Meta can be the inference host for this, or you can get some of these models in their Meta app, but you can also do that on any other provider because it's an open source model. So like, I think that Wall Street has had some questions and probably will have some questions about their approach for the amount of money they're spending to train these things. I think just talking about this for the impact on society and like the impact on us that get to benefit from this and not have to pay the money to train the foundational models, I actually thought the piece in the Wall Street Journal was pretty good. The argument that it was making was this very like manifesto style piece that was laying out Mark and Meta's philosophy on superintelligence more broadly. And I think their core argument was really like, it's not a question of if superintelligence comes or maybe even when. It's a question of like, who has the control of it when it does, and them arguing that it's this very liberal notion if you concentrate it in the hands of the few, and it might actually be more dangerous to do that for society than distributing it to anyone. The pillars that he built off of in the essay to do that, one was that individual empowerment is the engine of prosperity. Invention rather than automation is going to be the real purpose of this technology. So it's not about taking what we do day to day and like fully automating it, but instead leveling up individuals by virtue of the agents that we have running locally or somewhere that we control. and that some balance of power in society is like the core attribute of society. Like if you put too much power in corporate hands, that's bad. Too much in government hands, that's bad. So having some democratization of it.
Look, Matt, you're speaking to the choir. Like, I feel like these takes have been floating.
You're libertarian?
Well, they've just been floating around the ether for a while, you know, like research fundamentally is this, right? Like this is the idea that you're giving like a public good to society so that they can have access to, new advances. And so like, it's funny because like LLMs really started as a research endeavor. Like they were like this very like made up construct that people were aspiring to, but no one thought we would actually reach AGI by training neural networks, right? It was always like kind of like this like toy thing that we worked on that was really cool, and people liked working on it, and academics loved working on it because it's sort of like this, it felt like this like elusive problem that would never really necessarily be solved, but this could be one promising, interesting solution to it. And then once it actually showed promise, then all of a sudden became closed source, right? And everyone said, hey, well, let me make money off of this as quickly as possible. So, I've always like really liked the idea of research as this, egalitarian sort of public good that you're creating for society. Now, that said, to me, I always read these statements by private companies with a little bit of skepticism, like what is in it for you at the end of the day, right? Because there is something usually in it for them. Like usually it's like, hey, these are open source models, but if you want to run them effectively, like use our inference provider, right? Like we'll give you a good deal on them if you don't want to actually run them on your own device. Or maybe this is like a play on, hey, like we have these new smart glasses, like we want to create models that just happen to work well on our smart glasses. And so we'll sell you, or we'll give you the base model that we use, we'll post-train it for our glasses, and then we'll sell you the glasses, right? I don't know. I'm always a little skeptical when it's not coming from academia per se.
There's some incentive.
There's always some incentive, right? There's some bottom line here.
I mean, what do you think? Because like that's definitely the positive. I think you want to say like information should be free. It should be disseminated to people. What do you say to the argument of once we release it into the public's hands, these models become fundamentally different from the models that are hosted in the closed source platforms for two reasons. One of which is that the classifiers that we can put on to the queries that you send the model are usually bolt on additional models. You can't enforce that those are going to run locally alongside this code.
That's true.
Right? Like
That's
if
true.
I literally give you this like model architecture, you can say, hey, I'm going to let myself ask whatever question I want to the model. That seems like the only natural conclusion is you're going to remove those additional classifiers. So then you say, okay, well, additional classifiers aren't going to work. We need to bundle this into the actual weights themselves and have the model just reject anything that's bad. But the issue with that is that you can often train out that behavior by virtue of having the weights.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll see if you go on Hugging Face, there's like 1,000 unlocked versions of existing models, which basically train out these safeguards. And it turns out that's actually not that hard to do because like you'll usually put in the safeguards later on in training, and it's not that intense computationally of a matter. Just say, well, let's like undo some of what we did.
Right,
so
right.
What do you say to that argument? Because it's a question of balances, right? Like I'm sure some people will say, hey, categorically no open models of any intelligence whatsoever. Some people will say, release it all, give me a 10 trillion parameter model. And then there's like the nuance in the middle, I think is more realistic of like, well, what tries to balance the security trade-off?
Yeah, so I think we should distinguish a little bit the model from the harness. We haven't talked about this yet as much as we should, I think, because these two things are actually fundamentally different. Like you can train a model and it could be a really good model, but it's only a really powerful model if you pair it with a really good harness. Harness is basically like all of the tools that you give the model access to, right? And so when you use Claude on your computer, not only are you using their model, you're also using all their super specialized tools, right? Like think of like a, I don't know, like think of like a Navy SEAL, right? With all of like their like harness of like special weapons and whatever, right?
Kit.
Blah, blah, blah. You got your kit, right? You really need you need the tools to be able to do work, right? Without the tools, you're just there's not much you can do fundamentally, right? So Claude has this really, slick advanced harness that they use in combination with their model to have these really crazy capabilities. Now, if you just take an open source model and you don't give it any tools, or you just give it a single tool, which is what a lot of companies will do, which is like you can make calls to the web. That model is still going to be good, but it's going to be very limited because it only has this one tool, which is making calls to the web, which is sometimes like information that you need to create a nuclear bomb or to create a, like an advanced cyber attack. it might be on the web, but it might be hidden behind some paywall, or maybe it's only found in like a book or something like that. And maybe that book is on the web, but it's hard to get access to this information if you don't have really specialized tools, right?
But you can run an open source model on Cloud Code.
You can on the harness. On the harness, because Cloud Code is the harness, right? That's true. But, companies will sometimes only give you access to like a dumbed down version of the harness. I guess my point here is like the tools that you create, that you open source, are also, or sometimes as important as the model that you open source, right? And yeah, I mean, open source models are dangerous. Are they catastrophic? I don't know, man. I really don't know. I really don't know how I feel about it. It's one of these things where I feel like we're seeing these crazy behaviors of these models because they are both, one, really good models, but two, they're given access to these insanely good harnesses and intense amounts of compute, and then are they able to discover these vulnerabilities. I think for normal people like me and you, it would be really hard to reproduce some of these crazy zero-shot, emergent behaviors that we're seeing Sol and Mythos have if we only have access to the compute that we usually would have access to as normal people, right? I think you could probably have similar behaviors with an open source model, but you need to have a really good harness. You'd have to have really good engineers, and you'd have to have millions of dollars to be able to buy this compute, I'm curious how you feel about it, though. I mean, I think it's kind of like at this point right now where pushing in the direction of open sourcing more isn't bad per se, especially smaller models that can run on device. I think we are not at the point yet where smaller models that are running on your computer can have this like catastrophic emergent behavior that we see in these bigger models.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think it depends to how good these models get at doing things without having to iterate through a lot of passes. Because I think you're right. I mean, the GPU budgets that were implicitly spent doing all this token generation to actually hack Hugging Face, I'm sure was probably in the millions, or at least like in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for the GPUs that model was running on that then like would churn, talk to each other. There's no way that we would be able to bootstrap that with a model near that intelligence level in something that would be feasible to run outside of a data center. Like PG&E would call me up if I had that many GPUs in my apartment and say, what on earth are you doing? Do you have a weed farm in here? You just couldn't do it, right? So then you're talking about more like nation state actors and companies that are doing these things that I think you can just put more safeguards in. Like I think with some of these things, I'm more worried about lone actor scenarios to some degree. Because, a hacker that is sophisticated enough geopolitically can probably train their own model too, or leverage a model that is already trained and like fine tune it. Like I think you're just dealing with like a different set of considerations when you're dealing with governments versus like individual actors. I don't know. I mean, so long as you need that compute to do that, I think that can act as a safeguard. I think the concern is what you said, which smaller models are getting more and more capable over time. And it's becoming more and more feasible to run one of these frontier models under some quantization schema on like the top of the line MacBook Pro that is not cheap, but you can walk out of the Apple store today, get that for like $4,000 and be able to run some of these models on. So I don't know, man, like that question, I get a little spooked by. Training out these safeguards, I also get a little spooked by, where like there is some very malicious intelligence in the model that in some ways we're just painting over. Like the paint was already put on via some RL pass, but you take that same checkpoint and you're like, I think we can train out this behavior over time.
And by the way, it's like, it's not hard to train this out. You know what I mean? It's not like rocket science to like, it's not like you're like peering into the model and like taking out this like super specialized safeguard. It's literally just, you just take a bunch of data that the model shouldn't see and you just let it see it. That's all it is. It's like not that hard. You know what I mean? You could easily just do this. So I don't know, man. I mean, to me,
I just don't know how to mitigate against that.
I don't know how to mitigate it against it either.
Maybe like if we can get fantastic alignment and solve alignment almost in closed form, I think I'd feel a lot safer, but I just don't think that is a tractable problem to solve.
Yeah, I think right now the best safeguard is just the fact that to get this to work as a really dangerous system, you would need one, really good tools, two, a ton of compute. And it's not just that like your computer can run these models. It's the fact that these models are running for like months on end or weeks on end, right? And so in order to run these models, you would have to have a really clever way of compressing and storing everything that the model has seen to date.
Yeah.
And how do you get that? Well, you only get that by having access to a really good harness that figures out how to store this information, right? But if you only have access to the base model, you can't necessarily create these super long running agents. So there's some sort of like implicit safeguards there, right? Now, if someone were to say, hey, we're going to give a malicious actor access to a ton of compute, a really good harness, and a really good model, then it gets a little dangerous, right? And so I don't know. I mean, is there a world where like, China sells like a really good model, really good harness, and a ton of compute to Iran? Maybe, right? I don't know. But is this going to come from Mark Zuckerberg's Glimmer model? I don't think so, right? I don't think that that's where the attack vector is going to come from.
Hope you're right.
I think it's just like pragmatically. I think like I think that like realistically, Kimi 3 is going to be a better model after people start interacting with it than Glimmer. Kimi K3 is like an amazing model, right? And that's an open source model. So time will tell, man.
Yeah, I mean, like it will with all of this, man.
Yeah,
we're in the singularity.
Yeah, maybe
we're getting close.
We're getting close, or maybe we are. Who knows?
Who knows? I am empathetic to the viewpoint of like an exponential looks pretty linear when you're actually zoomed in enough. That worries me.
Yeah.
That worries me. You want to see something fun to close out the show?
Yeah, let's do it.
A little bit more fun than us talking
Here's,
about the security.
Some videos of a puppy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've got another one of Mark Zuckerberg.
Okay.
I want to stay on the segment, but I want to show you. I want to show you this hype reel.
Round 2 against Mark Zuckerberg. Machine versus machine.
This is the wrestling video. Yeah.
Ready?
Mark,
Did
are
you see
ready?
this?
Go. Fight.
Which, by the way, they've done this twice now, I guess.
Oh yeah, keep
Well,
wrestling each other.
He said like I'm back. Like this
I'm
is
back.
the second fight.
Yeah.
Is this in a series? The production quality on this. How do you think this went down?
Why film this?
This kind of like
Or
he got
like
his
what-
social guy with a drone, and he was like, "Yeah, this is come out to my floating." I think this is in Lake Tahoe.
I mean, I feel like this is objectively kind of sick, right? Like to be able to have like a floaty thing, like for like
Sure.
I probably
I don't know if I would kick.
I don't know if I
it.
would do this, but it could be kind of fun to like have a float and have like a barbecue
I agree with that.
in the middle of Lake Tahoe if you
I agree
had
with
$1
that.
billion. Now, why film it and why film yourself boxing? Interesting, I mean, like this whole Mark Zuckerberg rebrand to me has always been fascinating.
Yeah,
I think he buys it. I think he loves.
I think
thing.
he totally buys
I think
it.
he loves like the
Um,
Joe Rogan-esque, like, whatever, the MMA kind of leading into like the UFC sort of like male, I don't know what to even call it, dude.
Yeah.
Like, this like the sense that like, he has to be like a tough guy kind of vibe.
Mhm.
I think he really likes it.
I think the quotient of hate that he gets
Yeah.
to kudos that he gets for this is so disproportionate in the hate camp
That's a good way of putting it.
that
yeah.
he must do it just
Yeah.
because he likes doing it. Maybe he's also trying to troll the people that don't like it, but like I think that if he didn't actually feel passionate about this, there would be no reason
Yeah.
for him to do
Yeah.
this and to publicize it.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think like on some level you have to give the guy some kudos. So like he clearly enjoys this. It's a hobby. He gets a lot of flack
Sure.
and like that's okay.
I think he likes it, and he just like flies in a bunch of Russian guys or
He got some pretty good hits in. I also love when Priscilla just drops by,
yeah.
checks on him. She's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you doing okay, Mark?
You doing okay, Mark?" I think this
Anyway.
guy's I think Khabib, like one of the big fighters in the UFC, like
I
one of the
don't think
goats.
so.
I feel like
That's him?
this might be in his posse. Yeah, these guys are all from
Interesting.
this place called Dagestan.
Huh.
And
That's like that's a country.
I think I don't.
Is it state of
I'll
mind?
plead the fifth on this. I'm not sure if they consider themselves a country or if it's
Got it.
part of Russia
Got it.
officially. You know what I mean? But
Sure. Yeah, he's the UFC #1 bantamweight,
there we go.
which also big brand ambassador.
There we go.
Well, hey, cool. On that note, Rich.
On that happy note,
On that happy note, what would you do if you had this floating barge in Lake Tahoe?
I would probably just have a little barbecue, dude.
Mm.
Maybe that's a little too simplistic. Maybe I should dream bigger.
I think a
Or maybe we
cold
should just
plunge sauna would
maybe
be
we
kinda
should wrestle
sick.
each other. Maybe that.
Yeah, I like that.
Something like
put
that.
some mud in there.
Yeah,
Just do some
exactly.
mud wrestling.
I don't know about that, dude. But
Men.
anyway, dude. Well,
Hey.
have a good summery, cloudy day in San Francisco,
Yeah.
buddy.
Thanks, man. Hey, it's the sun's poking out.
Sun's poking
I think
out.
we'll do okay. Well, hey,
All right, buddy. Till
Till
next
next
one.
week.
See ya.
Later.